People think being a park ranger is peaceful, that it's just long hikes and quiet mornings and fresh air, and sure, sometimes it is. But in Black Hollow National Forest, we do more than clear trails and check campsites. We follow the rules, the real ones. The ones that they don't put on the official training manual. The ones passed down ranger to ranger, whispered over coffee in the break room, carved into the back of our skulls after the first time we see something that, well, we shouldn't. These rules aren't just for our safety, and they're for the guests too. Not that we can tell them that. No one wants to hear that if they step off the trail at the wrong time, they might not come back as themselves. No one wants to know that if they hear someone calling their name from the river, they need to keep walking. So we handle it. We watch, we warn, and when people disappear, we file the reports, knowing damn well we'll never find the body. If you're reading this, it means you've taken a job here. You might think you're prepared, but you're not. But if you want to last longer than a season, there's one thing you need to do. Follow the rules. There's a place just past Fisherman's Hollow, along the edge of the Black Hollow River, where the trees grow tight and the moss carpets the ground so thick that it silences your footsteps. I don't take guests there anymore. It was my first season as a ranger, back when I thought the rules were just stories, warnings passed down to keep rookies on their toes. I hadn't seen anything yet. I hadn't learned. Then I found a pile. It was late September, and the trees just starting to catch fire with autumn. I was marking overgrown trails when I saw something pale in the clearing ahead. And at first I thought it was mushrooms, a cluster of them, littering the ground, but as I got closer, I saw that they weren't mushrooms. They were bones. Little tiny ones. Rabbits, birds, mice, all stacked perfectly into a circle, arranged with purpose. The skulls were placed along the outer ring, each one facing inward. The longer I stared, the more wrong it felt. Like something about the arrangement wasn't just precise, it was intentional. I radioed it in.
Hey, Curtis, you ever seen something like this before?
And there was a long pause, and then Curtis came back, voice flat.
Leave it alone. It's a pile of... I said leave it alone, kid.
I should have listened. I don't know what made me do it. Some dumb mix of curiosity and arrogance. I took a stick and I nudged one of the bones, rolling it over. And the second I did, the wind changed. The forest had been still, quiet except for the occasional rustle, but after that everything stopped. No birds, no insects, no sound except for a distant clicking, like wet teeth snapping together. I left the pile and walked back to the station, trying to shake off the feeling that I'd just interrupted something. And that night, I dreamt about the bones, but not just small ones, bigger ones. A pile that grew taller and taller, filled with things that shouldn't have been there. Bones that were too big and too jagged, too much like mine. When I woke up, I felt something under my blanket. It was hard and small. Nice. I reached down and pulled it out. A rabbit skull. I burned it in the fire pit behind the station, watched the flames turn it black, and let the smoke curl into the air until there was nothing left, but it didn't matter. Because the next day the pile was back, in the same place and the same bones, except this time something was different. Something had been added. A bone that was longer and more solid. One I thought I recognized. A human finger bone. I checked my hands and counted my fingers, ran my palms over my ribs, my arms, everything was there. But my body felt wrong, like something had been taken without my knowing, like I was missing something I couldn't name. And I didn't tell Curtis. Not then. I just followed his advice and left it alone. And for a while that was enough. And then last year, the new hire, Ethan, found a pile near Cold Hollow Pass. I wasn't there when it happened, but he told me everything. It looked like some kind of ritual thing, he said, rubbing his hands together like he was trying to shake off the memory. Bird bones mostly. Some cat bones, I don't know. Thought maybe some sicko was killing strays. Did you touch it? I asked. Ethan hesitated. Yeah, just one piece. Just to move it aside. I felt cold all over. Did anything happen after? Ethan laughed, but it was forced, nervous. No, man, I just... And then he stopped and his face twitched. Just for a second. Actually, yeah, man, I started getting these weird dreams. I didn't say anything, just let him talk. Kept dreaming about a fire, he muttered, his eyes distant. A big one, out in the woods. And there was something or someone standing in it. Did you see their face? Ethan shook his head. No, just their arms. Their long arms. They were holding something. Holding what? I don't know. It looked like a... And then he stopped. Froze completely. I swear to God his skin turned pale, like all the blood had drained out of him. Dude? I asked, and he then swallowed. He touched his right hand, stared at it like he wasn't sure if it was real. I think I'm missing a knuckle. He tried to laugh, but his voice cracked. I grabbed his wrist and ran my finger over the bone. It was smooth where it shouldn't have been. And the middle joint felt wrong, like it had healed over a long time ago. But it hadn't because Ethan had been fine yesterday. Told Curtis and he didn't even blink. Yeah, he said. That tends to happen sometimes. What the hell, Curtis? He didn't answer. He just said, you got lucky when you messed with yours. That's the only reason why you still got all your fingers. And that was the end of the conversation. Now I don't touch the piles. And if I find them, I report them, and I move on. I don't ask questions. I don't know what's making them, and I don't know where the missing bones go. I don't know how Ethan lost something without ever bleeding, but I know one thing. If you ever see a bone pile in Black Hollow, you leave it alone. Or next time the missing bones might be yours. Rule number 1. If you find a pile of small animal bones arranged in a circle, do not disturb them. If the bones are still wet, report the location to the station and leave immediately. You ever have that feeling that something is missing but can't quite put your finger on what? Like when you walk into a room and forget why, or you stare at your own handwriting and swear it looks different than it should. And that kind of thing happens a lot out here, but I didn't start to notice it until the day Jamie and I found the missing trail. Jamie was my patrol partner for most of the season, back when we were still marking old paths and clearing ones that had been left to rot. Curtis sent us out to Echo Bend, where a long-forgotten loop trail was supposed to be, though I'd never hiked it myself. It was still on the maps, but nobody had maintained it for years. The park was getting complaints about hikers getting turned around, so we were just supposed to flag it as impassable. Easy peasy. It was a hot, miserable hike. It was too dry, no wind, the kind of air that made you feel like your sweat was just sticking to your skin instead of cooling you off. We were about 2 hours in when Jamie stopped walking. At first I thought she was taking a break, but then I saw the way she was standing, stiff and wary, and I followed her gaze. The trail ahead had just stopped. And not like it had been blocked by a falling tree or washed away by a landslide. It just wasn't there anymore. 1 second we were following a well-worn path, and the next, nothing but unbroken forest. No gaps in the underbrush, no subtle indentations in the dirt. Like the land had never been walked on at all. I pulled out the GPS and checked the map, and we were in the right place. It was supposed to keep going for another half-mile at least, but looking ahead, you'd never know it even existed. Jamie exhaled sharp and shook her head. "That's weird," she muttered, shifting her pack higher onto her shoulders. "Did we miss a turn or something?" I double-checked. No, we hadn't. We were exactly where we were supposed to be. And then we heard it. Footsteps. Not from behind us, not from the woods. From where the trail should have been. Jamie's hand found my arm. I could feel the way her fingers tightened. The footsteps weren't approaching, but they were there, pacing, shifting, moving. The unmistakable weight of something walking on solid ground. Jamie reached for her radio, but I grabbed her wrist before she could speak. I wasn't sure why, but I didn't want to make a noise. Instead, I took a slow step forward. "Dude," Jamie whispered, but I didn't stop. I just needed to see it, needed to understand. I got close enough to feel the change in the air, the way it felt heavier, like stepping into a space that didn't quite belong to me. It made my stomach twist and my teeth ache. And the moment my boot hit the edge of where the trail should have continued, the footsteps stopped. It's total silence. Jamie yanked me back, hard, muttering something under her breath that I couldn't catch. My pulse was pounding, my vision swimming slightly. But I turned to follow her, ready to leave, ready to pretend that we hadn't just heard something maybe impossible. And then I saw the footprints. It's not behind us, not leading back the way we came. It was in front of me. Deep, fresh boot prints in the dirt, stepping forward into the place where the trail had disappeared. Like I had already walked there. Like I had already made the choice to step into whatever was waiting. I don't remember the hike back to the station. I don't remember anything between Jamie yanking me backward and me sitting in the break room, staring down at my hands, feeling like I had forgotten something. Like I'd almost left something behind, or maybe I already lost it. I just hadn't noticed yet. Jamie wouldn't talk about it. She quit a few days later, packed up, and left town completely. The trail's still marked on the maps, and it's still marked as impassable, but hikers ask about it sometimes. But didn't this trail used to go further? I swear we hiked this last year, and it kept going. I always tell them no, but sometimes I wonder if I'd taken that step, if I'd followed those footsteps into the missing part of the world. Would I have ever made it back? Or would some other version of me be standing at the edge of the trail right now, looking back at the place that I should have never left? Rule number 2. If a well-worn trail suddenly ends without warning, turn around. If a guest insists that the trail used to continue, do not correct them. If you hear footsteps ahead of you, even though there is no more trail, do not follow them. Most people don't pay attention to time out here. Phones lose service, watches run slow, and the sunlight barely changes under the trees. It's easy to get turned around, to forget whether you left the station at noon or 1. But you always have some sense of it, a gut feeling, your internal clock. Unless the forest decides to take that away. I learned about the missing hour my first year here, but I didn't believe it until it happened to me. It was early October, and I was doing a solo patrol near Split Rock Ridge, a quiet stretch of trail where the trees grow too close together, their branches tangled overhead like knotted fingers. It's a peaceful place, usually. Birds are always chirping, and you can hear the wind through the leaves, and even when the air is still. That day it was completely silent. I didn't notice it at first, but as I kept walking, the quiet pressed against me like I held breath. No wind, no insects, no birds, just the sound of my own boots crunching the dirt. I checked my watch, 2:13 p.m. I radioed in a routine check, listened to Curtis mumble something about the weather, and kept moving. I must have blinked or looked at the trees a second too long because the next thing I knew I was somewhere else. Not far, just 20 feet ahead of the trail. But I don't remember walking there. It was like skipping ahead in a movie, like my brain had cut out a section and pasted the next scene over it. I stopped walking and my stomach churned. Something felt off. And I looked at my watch and it was 3:13 p.m. Exactly 1 hour had passed. I don't mean it felt like an hour. I mean, I checked my watch, blinked, and the next thing I knew it was 1 hour later. To the minute. I stood there for a long time, gripping my radio, telling myself I must have zoned out or something. I must have just lost track of time, but my body didn't feel like I'd been hiking for another hour. My legs weren't tired, my water bottle was still as full as it had been at 2:13. And then I noticed something else. My boot prints, the ones I should have left behind me on the trail, were gone. The dirt behind me was smooth and undisturbed, like I had never walked there. I turned in a slow circle, feeling something crawl up my spine. I thought about calling it in, but what the hell was I supposed to say? Hey Curtis, I think I just skipped an hour of my life and erased my own footprints. Instead, I took a slow step backwards. My boot pressed into the dirt, leaving a crisp, fresh print. Good. It's normal. That's how things were supposed to work. And then took another step and that print vanished. Not like something brushed it away, not like the wind kicked up, just gone. Like I'd never stood there. The air around me began to feel thick and wrong, like the pressure before a storm. My skin prickled, my ears rang. I took another step forward, and this time I didn't look down. I didn't check to see if I was leaving a trail. I just walked. After a few minutes, the sound came back. Birds chirping, wind rustling, a distant woodpecker knocking against a tree. The forest righted itself like nothing had happened, like I just imagined the whole thing. Except when I checked my watch again, it still said 3:13 p.m. It stayed on 3:13 for the entire walk back to the station. When I got inside, I went straight to the break room, ignoring Curtis, ignoring the other rangers. I sat at the table, heart still pounding, and I watched the second hand of my watch start moving again. That was the moment I knew that something had happened to me on that trail. Something I wasn't meant to understand. Curtis must have noticed my face because, after a while, he sat across from me and sipped his coffee like he had all the time in the world. Maybe he did.
Split Rock?
He asked, and I nodded.
Lost an hour.
I nodded again. He just sighed, leaned back in his chair, and scratched his jaw.
You didn't try to remember anything, did you?
That caught me off guard.
What?
Curtis set his mug down with a quiet clink.
Whatever happened in that hour, it ain't meant to be remembered.
He tapped the side of his head.
You start trying too hard, start digging too deep, well, you'll just make it worse.
I wanted to tell him that I hadn't tried, that I was too damn scared to try, but before I could speak, he gave me a hard look.
People go missing out there sometimes, he said, his voice low. Real missing. No tracks, no gear, no sign that they were ever there at all. If you only lost an hour, well, count yourself lucky.
And I didn't sleep much that night. For weeks after, I'd wake up in the middle of the night with the feeling that something had been in my room, something standing at the foot of my bed, but just outside of my vision. I'd feel it watching and wonder if I was ready to remember. I never went back to Split Rock Ridge alone. Rule number 3. If your watch, phone, or any timekeeping device suddenly jumps forward by exactly 1 hour, leave immediately. If you feel as though you've woken up mid-shift, do not attempt to recall what happened. Do not let visitors linger in areas where time behaves strangely. If you spend enough time in Black Hollow, you start to recognize the trees. There's the 3-fingered pine near the trailhead, the hollow oak by the river bend, the old lightning stump halfway up Raven's Crest. The forest shifts in ways that I don't understand, but those trees? They've always been there. And so has the thing beneath them. It was early spring when I first saw the fingers. I was clearing fallen branches after a storm, checking for downed trees when I came across an old white oak that had been partially tipped over. The storm had torn up the roots, exposing a deep tangle of earth and rot beneath. The dirt smelled wet and thick with decay, and that's when I noticed the hands, or at least what I thought were hands. Pale, wrinkled fingers protruded from the soil, as if something was reaching up from below. My first thought was that I had stumbled onto some forgotten grave, but something about the skin, it wasn't dead, it was too full, it was too soft. The knuckles twitched as I got closer, shifting just slightly, like a breath beneath the dirt. I radioed it in. "Hey, Curtis, you might want to come out here." His voice came back, flat as ever. "Rangers?" I paused. Yeah. Leave it alone." I stared at the fingers, at the way they seemed to flex just beneath the surface. "Curtis, what is this?" Another pause, and then, "How many?" I swallowed hard and counted. 10, I said. Curtis exhaled sharply, like he'd been holding his breath. "Good." Good? How the hell is that good? I wanted to ask more, but the longer I stood there, the more something in my gut screamed at me to leave. I took a step back, and I swore I felt the ground beneath me shift, just slightly, like something was shifting its weight, settling deeper into the soil. The next day I went back, and the tree was still there. The roots were still tangled in the air, but the fingers were gone. I don't mean someone came and removed them. I mean there wasn't even a hole where they had been. The ground was smooth and undisturbed, like nothing had ever been buried there at all. That night I woke up with the strangest feeling, and my bed felt wrong. It felt too firm and lumpy. When I ran my hands under the sheets, my fingers touched something solid, and I yanked back the blanket. There, half sunk in the mattress, were 10 fingers, not severed and not rotting, but growing. I burned the sheets, and Curtis never asked about it. Rule number 4. If you see fingers protruding from beneath the exposed roots of a fallen tree, do not investigate. If the fingers appear to be breathing, leave the area immediately. If you return the next day and the fingers are closer to the surface, you need to leave the forest. Most people don't whistle in the woods. The sound carries strangely, warps between the trees. What starts as a friendly tune can come back sounding wrong. Some mornings, when the fog rolls in thick over the trails, you hear it. A tune you don't recognize, one note at a time, drifting through the mist. The first time I heard it, I was guiding a small group through the North Hollow Pass. The fog had settled in so thick that I could barely see 10 feet ahead, so I kept the hikers close, checking the compass every few minutes to make sure that we were still on track. Then, from somewhere to the left of the trail, I heard it. A whistle. Not a hiker's call or not a bird, just a slow, deliberate tune. One that I'd never heard before. It came in bursts, 3 notes, and then a pause, then 3 more. The pattern repeated, like it was wanting someone to respond. One of the hikers, a teenage boy, probably no older than 16, whistled back, a quick, cheerful little trill. I swear to God the forest stopped breathing. The trees seemed taller and the fog denser. The air pressed against my ears like I had stepped too deep underwater. When the whistle returned, it was the same 3-note tune, but it was closer. The boy laughed. "Huh, I guess someone's lost out there." I grabbed his shoulder. "We keep walking, now." He looked confused, but the edge in my voice must have gotten through, because he didn't argue. Picked up the pace, moving fast but steady, not running. Running makes you pray. The fog swirled around us, stretching the trees into long, unnatural shapes. I kept my eyes forward, focused on the trail, but the whistle kept pace with us. 3 notes. A pause. 3 more. Always at our side, just out of sight, and it changed. The three-note tune became a garbled mess, too many notes at once crashing over each other like the imitation had gone wrong. It wasn't whistling anymore. It was something trying to whistle. Something that didn't quite understand the shape of a mouth maybe, or the way sound is supposed to move. The hiker started to notice then, and the boy went pale. The tune warped again, stretching out, breaking apart. And then from somewhere behind us, I heard it. A whisper in a voice that sounded almost like mine. You shouldn't have answered. I don't remember much after that. I just remember the moment we broke through the fog. One step, two, and suddenly the air was clear, the sun was shining, and the forest was normal again. The whistling was gone. I didn't say anything to the hikers. I just led them back to the station and checked them off the roster, making sure each and every one was accounted for. Before I left for the day, Curtis clapped his hand on my shoulder. You hear it? He asked, and I nodded. He nodded back, then handed me a fresh map. New route tomorrow. I took it without a word. Rule number 5. If fog rolls in unnaturally fast, do not let hikers wonder. If you hear someone whistling a tune you don't recognize, do not whistle back. If the whistling continues, even after the fog lifts, cover your ears and keep walking. Rivers are loud. Anyone who's spent enough time near one knows that. The constant rush of water over the rocks, the distant bubbling of rapids further downstream. It's never quiet. Which is why, if you ever find yourself standing by the Black Hollow River and you hear it go silent, you need to leave. I didn't understand why at first. Back when I was still new and questioning everything, Curtis told me straight up, if the river stops making noise, you don't go near it. And if someone calls you from the river, you keep walking. I thought it was some safety thing, flash floods, shifting currents, whatever. That made sense. But I didn't explain the second part, and I saw it for myself. It was late spring, just after the melt, when the river runs fast and heavy. I was leading a routine patrol along the South Fork, checking for fallen trees and signs of erosion. The water was moving rough that day, real choppy, the kind of current that could knock down a grown man. I made a note to put up fresh warning signs. And that's when I heard the voice. It was faint, barely audible over the rush of water, but I knew it was there. A woman's voice, lilting, broken, like she was half sobbing, half calling for help. I turned toward the river, heart already pounding, and she was standing in the shallows just beyond the rocks, waist deep in the current. Her clothes clung to her like she'd been in the water too long, and her arms were limp at her sides, her face turned away from me. I froze. The way she was standing, it was too still, like something had placed her there, and she lifted her head slightly, just enough for me to hear her whisper, "Help me." Something was wrong. The river was still moving fast, but there was no sound, no rush of water, no bubbling rapids. The air itself, it felt just wrong. I stepped back, swallowing against the dryness in my throat. "Ma'am, you need to get out of the water." She didn't move, didn't turn, just whispered again, "Please help me." Then she started walking forward, but not the way a person wades through a river. Her movements didn't match the water. The current should have been pushing against her, slowing her down, but she moved like it wasn't even there, like she was walking on solid ground. I stepped back again. My instinct screamed at me to run. And then she turned her head, and I only saw her face for a second, but it wasn't right. Her features were smooth. Her eyes were too big and too black. Her mouth was wrong, slightly too wide, and when she smiled, I swear to God, I saw something moving beneath her teeth. The water around her churned, but she didn't sink. I did what Curtis told me. I turned around and I walked. I didn't run, and I didn't look back. I just walked until the trees swallowed the river and the sound of the rushing water came flooding back all at once. When I got back to the station, Curtis was waiting. He didn't ask me what I saw. He just handed me a thermos of coffee and said, "You hear the river go quiet?" I nodded. "Did she ask for help?" I nodded again. Curtis patted my shoulders. "You did good." I never asked what would have happened if I would have stepped in. I honestly don't want to know. Rule number 6. If you hear a voice calling from the river, do not approach the water. If the water looks deeper than usual, do not let guests swim. If a guest claims they saw something moving beneath the surface, instruct them all to leave immediately. There are plenty of things in Black Hollow that should not exist. Seeing glimpses of them. Things with too many fingers, things that don't leave footprints, things that breathe when they shouldn't. But the one that gets under my skin the most, the one I hate thinking about, the thing that looks like me. I first heard about it from a hiker. She was a solo camper, a seasoned one at that. She came in one morning looking pale as a ghost. Said she was cutting through the lower basin when she saw someone standing just off the trail. "Thought it was a ranger at first," she said, voice shaky. "They were wearing the uniform and everything, but something felt wrong." I asked her what she meant. She swallowed hard, like she was trying to keep herself from saying something stupid. "They waved at me," she said. "But the way they did it, it felt like they didn't know why they were waving." I frowned. "What do you mean?" She demonstrated a slow, deliberate lift of her arm, fingers straight, no movement in the wrist. Mechanical and inhuman. Then she said the part that made my stomach churn. "Well, they had your face." I laughed. I had to. "Are you sure? I mean, all of us rangers kind of dress the same." She shook her head. "No. It was you. I would swear it on my life. It was your face." I tried to brush it off. I told her that maybe what she saw was someone who looked like me, but she wasn't buying it. Honestly, well, neither was I. Later that day, I saw for myself. I was coming back from the West Hollow trailhead when I caught movement at the tree line. At first, I thought it was an animal. Hiker, maybe. But when I turned my head fully, my heart had stopped. It was me. Standing just beyond the trees, maybe 20 feet away, half hidden in the brush. Same uniform, same build, same face, but the posture was wrong. Its shoulders were too stiff, its head tilted just slightly like it was getting used to wearing a body. And what I find to be the worst part was it was smiling. Not a normal smile, not even a threatening one. Just a smile. Like it was trying something out. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I didn't react. Curtis told me once, if you see something that looks like you don't acknowledge it. You just leave. So that's what I did. I turned back towards the station, walked at a steady pace, and didn't check my reflection in the windows when I got inside. I sat down, hands shaking, and tried to breathe. My radio crackled. A voice, nearly mine, whispered through the static. "You saw me this time." I don't check the tree line anymore. And if a hiker ever waves at me from a distance, I don't wave back. Not until I see their face. Rule number 7. If a guest waves at you from a distance, do not wave back until you confirm their face. If you see yourself standing at the tree line, do not react. If it starts walking toward you, leave the forest immediately. The supply cabin at Black Hollow Station isn't much. Just a single-room structure tucked behind the main outpost, stocked with extra gear, first aid kits, and emergency rations. It's not locked. Hasn't been for years. We're the only ones who use it, and no guest has any reason to wander back there. That's why, if you ever see the door open, you don't go inside. It was late November, right at the end of the season, when the trails go quiet and the snow starts creeping in. Most of the seasonal rangers had already packed up and gone home, so it was just me, Curtis, and a skeleton crew holding down the station. One afternoon, I went to grab some supplies from the cabin, just routine inventory checks, making sure nothing had been chewed up by mice. As I rounded the corner, I stopped cold. The door was open. Now, normally that wouldn't mean much. Maybe someone forgot to shut it all the way. Maybe a wind gust knocked it loose. But something about the way it stood there, slightly ajar, made my stomach twist. The inside was dark, just a few shelves visible from where I stood. Then there was movement, and I saw someone inside. A figure, half hidden in the shadows, standing between the shelves. For a second I thought it was Curtis. Same ranger uniform, same broad shoulders, same familiar stance, but then I saw the hands. His fingers were too long and too thin. They didn't move right. They twitched slightly, as if adjusting to the air, curling inward like he was figuring out how hands were supposed to work. I knew then that it wasn't Curtis. Slowly, the figure turned its head toward me, and not quickly, not quite like a person either. Just a slow, gradual tilt, and the motion smooth and deliberate, the way you turn a mannequin. The light hit its face, and my breath caught in my throat. It was Curtis, or it looked like him. The uniform was identical, and the face was right, but the eyes, those were wrong. They were too dark and flat, empty. "Hey, you need something?" His voice was calm and casual, just like a ranger talking to a coworker, but I knew Curtis was still in the main station. The thing inside the cabin took a slow step toward me. That's when I did what Curtis had always told me. Turned around and walked away. Not too fast, not running, just steady, don't make a scene pace. Behind me, I heard the door creak open wider, but I didn't look back. By the time I got back to the main station, Curtis was exactly where I had left him, sitting at the desk, reading the old field guide. I stood there for a second, just staring at him, half expecting his head to tilt wrong. But instead, he just looked up, raising an eyebrow. "You good?" I didn't answer right away, I just nodded. "You saw the cabin open?" asked, his tone unreadable. I swallowed. "Yeah." Curtis exhaled, rubbing a hand down his face. "Did you go inside?" "No." "Did you talk to it?" "No." "Good." I asked what would have happened if I did, and I'm sure as hell not going back to the service shack alone. Rule number 8. If the supply cabin door is open when you arrive, do not go inside. If you see someone already inside the cabin, do not speak to them. If you find the door locked from the inside, walk away and report to Curtis. A lot of people assume the scariest thing in the woods is the darkness, but it isn't. It's the lights. People talk about them every season. Campers, hikers, hell, even rangers on overnight patrol. Little blue lights floating between the trees, just far enough to be out of reach. Sometimes they flicker, sometimes they dance. Sometimes they drift slowly like they're waiting for someone to follow. And they look harmless, and pretty even. But if you ever see them, you keep moving. You don't stop. You don't follow. You don't let them know that you saw them. I've seen them twice. First time was just a glimpse, something flickering at the edge of my vision during a dusk patrol. I ignored it, and that's why I'm still here. The second time, that was different. It was a night shift, deep in the backcountry near Fox Hollow Ridge, just me and another ranger named Davis, checking on an old fire tower that hadn't been used in years. It was one of those nights where the forest felt stretched, the kind of quiet that presses against your ears like a held breath. We were about halfway there when Davis grabbed my arm. "Stop." His voice was low and sharp. I turned to him, confused, but then I saw what he saw. Lights. Soft, blue, drifting lazily between the trees, pulsing faintly like fireflies underwater. There were maybe 5 or 6 of them scattered throughout the forest, moving with a purpose. I'd never seen them this close before. Davis didn't say anything else. He just turned and kept walking, faster this time. I followed, but the hair on the back of my neck stood up. Lights were moving more now, keeping pace with us. A few shifted closer, weaving through the trees, flickering in and out like candle flames in a breeze. I glanced at Davis. His jaw was tight, his hands were clenched at his sides. He knew something that I didn't. After about 5 minutes of fast-paced hiking, the lights started to fade. One by one, they drifted further into the trees until only the darkness remained. I let out a breath that I hadn't realized I was holding. But just as we reached the clearing where the fire tower stood, Davis grabbed my shoulders. "Look," he whispered, and I turned. There, just behind us, right where we had just walked, the lights had returned. But more of them this time. Dozens, lining up like lanterns. And that was the moment I felt it. The pull. It wasn't physical. I mean, not really. It was something in my head, something warm and whispering, something that wanted me to step off the trail. Just a few feet. Just far enough. I swallowed hard, and my legs twitched. Davis' hand tightened on my shoulder. "Don't." His voice snapped me back. I forced my feet forward, away from the lights, into the clearing where the fire tower loomed tall and skeletal against the sky. The second we stepped out of the trees, the lights winked out, not drifted away, not faded. They just ceased. Davis finally let out a breath, rubbing his face like he was wiping something away. I hesitated. What would have happened if I would have followed them? Davis didn't look at me. "Have you ever heard Curtis talk about the ones who don't come back?" I nodded slowly, and Davis sighed, shouldering his pack. "They don't leave bodies behind," he muttered, "just footprints leading off the trail." I didn't ask anything else. We didn't see the lights again that night. But back at the station, when I checked my boots, I found something lodged in the sole. A piece of fabric. Soft, thin, and blue. I never told anyone. And I'd never, ever walk Fox Hollow Ridge at night anymore. Rule number 9. If you see blue lights drifting between the trees, do not follow them. If a guest insists that they saw someone carrying a lantern, bring them back to the station immediately. If the lights appear inside the station, blow out every candle and turn off all the flashlights. There are some trees in Black Hollow that feel older than the forest itself. You can tell by the way the ground slopes around their roots, the way the air seems heavier near their trunks. But the one we call the oldest tree, that one's different. And if you ever see it, you walk away. People ask about it sometimes. Not often. Just the ones who have gone deeper into the woods than they should have. The ones who come back looking off. Not lost or scared. Just unsettled, like something in them is still trying to process what they saw. I used to think it was just a local legend, until I found it myself. It was mid-autumn, right after a storm had knocked half the trails to hell. Curtis sent me out to check the lower basin for flood damage, make sure that the paths were still walkable. It was an easy route, one that I'd hiked dozens of times before, but that day, something felt wrong. There was the damp smell of rotting leaves and the distant drip of water sliding from the canopy. Every so often, I'd stop and listen, trying to pick up on what was missing. And then I saw it. At first, it didn't even register that it was a tree. It was too massive. A hulking thing, half hidden in the mist, its bark so dark that it looked like a hole punched into the landscape. The roots bulged from the ground like something had tried to pull itself free and failed. The branches stretched wide, but the leaves, they weren't the right shape, and they weren't really any shape. Every time I blinked, they seemed different, shifting slightly like they were still deciding what they wanted to be. I don't know how long I stood there, staring at it, and my head felt light, not dizzy or sick, just empty, like something was slowly clearing out my thoughts, one by one. And then the ground moved. It's not a tremor, but a shift. The roots flexed. The trunk creaked, groaning deep in its core, the sound of old wood stretching. The longer I looked, the more I got the sinking, gut-deep feeling that the tree wasn't just old. It was also hungry. I took a step back, and then another. My brain was screaming at me, leave, 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 but my feet felt slow and heavy. And then I heard something that wasn't quite a whisper, but not quite a voice. It was a thought. You were supposed to stay. My chest seized. My vision swam. For one awful moment, I had the overwhelming sense that I had done this before, that I had stood here, exactly like this, more times than I could count, and that this was the first time that I had tried to leave. I forced my legs to move. I turned away, fighting against the weight in my head, against the slow, unraveling pull of forgetting. Every step felt harder, like something behind me was trying to reel me back in, but I kept walking. When I finally stumbled back to the main trail, all these sounds came back at once. Birds, wind, the rustling of leaves. I hadn't even realized how much I had been missing. Over my shoulder, but the tree, if it had ever even been there, was gone. Back at the station, I sat in the break room, hands shaking. Curtis walked in a few minutes later and took one look at me and then sighed. You remember seeing it this time, don't you? I didn't answer, and I didn't have to. He poured himself a cup of coffee, leaned against the counter, and rubbed his temples. If you ever see it again, he said, voice flat, you leave faster. I nodded. I never saw it again. But sometimes when I'm walking a trail that I know too well, I get the feeling that the turns are different, that the trees are arranged in the wrong places, that the forest is shifting, little by little, to lead me somewhere. If I'm not careful, I think one day I might find it again. Or worse, it might find me. Rule number 10. If a guest asks about a very large tree that doesn't match the surrounding forest, change the subject. If you've personally encountered the tree, walk away immediately and do not touch it. If the tree seems closer than before, you're in danger. Final note. Curtis was here before you. Curtis will be here after you. You get used to a lot of things working in Black Hollow. The silence, the eyes in the dark, the way the forest feels like it's always shifting just beneath your feet. You learn to follow the rules, to not ask questions. Some things aren't meant to be understood. I used to think I'd be the one to figure it all out, that I'd connect the dots, find the pattern, maybe even put an end to whatever in the hell it is that's going on out there. But that's just not how this place works. Black Hollow doesn't give you answers, it takes what it wants. So if you're new here, welcome. Follow the rules, memorize them. And if Curtis tells you to leave something alone, you better listen.